Three, two, one, here we go. Rainman's Take podcast. Observations on the world we live in. My take on current events and other topics of interest. Also, interviews with some really cool people. So let's get the conversation going. Hey everybody, it's the Rain Man. I want to give a shout out to all of you watching today. Thank you very much. I know you're going to find this next episode thought-provoking. I feel very strongly about these subjects, and I know you do too. So go ahead and hit the like button for me and subscribe by pressing on the logo at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. This will help me grow Rain Man's Take so that we can continue bringing great content to you in the future. So thanks again for being part of the Rain Man's Take community and enjoy this episode. All right, let's dive into today's topic, which is the insanity around the midterm elections. First of all, let me say I'm disappointed in the results from Tuesday. I was really hoping for a wet red wave, and as of right now, things are very much in limbo. As of Wednesday the 9th, the GOP had 203 House seats to the Democrats' 175, with the general consensus being the GOP would secure around 226 seats, thus taking control of the House. We'll see. In the Senate, it's basically tied, and several races are still too close to call right now. The final outcome of who controls the Senate will most likely be decided in the December runoff election for Georgia's seat. My take, that race and others and the subsequent control of the Senate is still very much in doubt. And I'm feeling like the Senate will stay Democratic, but we'll see. And I hope I'm wrong. So I consider myself a traditional libertarian with conservative values that align with many of the platform issues of Trump's presidency. I was hoping for a decisive GOP victory in Congress to counteract and stop many of the leftist policies of the Biden administration. I believe they are detrimental to our country and our way of life. I believe the radical progressive left has taken over the Biden administration and are very much aligned with the globalist view of the world. And I am very much against that. I've talked about these issues many times previously. So if you want my take, go ahead and check out some of those previous episodes. So I was originally planning to discuss two topics regarding the midterms. First was the insane rhetoric leading up to the election. And second, the labeling of anyone who aligns with Trump as a 2020 election denier. I will touch on these later on, but since the elections are over, I decided to change the focus of this episode after I received a text message from one of my best friends who is also conservative. It was a chain with four of us, and his text read, and I quote, "Overall, a disappointing day for Republicans. Here are my two big takeaways. Trump is toxic. The guys who did best distanced themselves from Trump. I would really like to see DeSantis run in 2024. Item 2 is that abortion is going to work against the Republicans unless they can reframe the issue. A lot of women will vote on that as a single issue." As a side note, one of my buddies also on that chain who lives in Florida responded. Florida did their part. So the text got me thinking, and I want to elaborate on those 2 points because I happen to agree with my friend. First, the Trump effect. Although I believe it helped in many races, and according to Trump himself, his record for his supported candidates was about 174-9. This narrative that Trump is the crazy de facto head of the Republican Party and is a lightning rod of controversy is well established. I believe a lot of people are trying to move on. The mainstream media is just pounding the whole January 6th narrative, which I don't buy at all, by the way. But Trump is portrayed as unhinged and radical, and I feel like people just want to move past that episode. As I mentioned, I agree with most of Trump's platform, so I'm not going to get into those points again. Here are a few other reasons why I've supported him in the past. First, he was one of the first Republican leaders that I can remember who was not afraid to call out the narrative the mainstream media was trying to spin about him and his policies. I loved how confrontational he was with them and when he would push back. He never shied away from taking on the press, something you never saw before and certainly don't see now with how sheltered Biden is from the media. The left and the mainstream media were out to silence Trump any way they could, and he fought them on every point to make sure his side was being heard. Second, he was not affected by the cancel culture and the torrent of hate he got on social media. I often wonder how he, or anyone for that matter, could do that and not have that affect them. Since Trump, many other people, usually conservatives, and definitely anyone who strays off the narrative, have learned to give the social media verse the middle finger, take the initial onslaught of the cancel culture mob, and usually come out on the other side relatively unscathed, and in some cases better off. It seems that cancel culture loses its effectiveness and impact if you don't care what they say, don't read the comments, and don't let them change your message or views. Obviously, easier said than done. I must say, I used to enjoy when Trump would tweet something, and I would think he's just doing that to fuck with the Twitterverse to get a rise out of them, and he was very good at that. Number 3. Trump was and is a Washington outsider and therefore did his job like a businessman, something I think DC should do but won't. In doing so, he exposed just how inefficient and, dare I say, corrupt the system is. My take, it opened the door to show how DC really works and for whom it works for. And it, unfortunately, is not for us, the citizens. He wanted America first ahead of globalism, because he knows how important and a strong and successful America is to the rest of the world. And I agree with that. Unfortunately, his bull in a china shop personality rubs many people the wrong way, especially in the establishment. And that's why he had to go, or at least be rendered ineffective. That effort came to a head in the midterm elections, I think. My response to my friend's text was to say, there's much to love about Trump, and I think guys like DeSantis were able to come out of their shells once Trump broke a few taboos, like responding directly and challenging the press, having that if you don't like it, go F yourself attitude. All things that needed to happen on the conservative side to counter the spin. That being said, he has become toxic. I want DeSantis, and I believe if it were to come to it in a primary, DeSantis would win. He's got all of Trump's balls in a more palatable package. I still believe in most of Trump's platform and positions, but at this point, I feel it's best for the success of those positions for someone else to take the lead. And in my view, it should be someone like DeSantis. The second point from my friend's text, the abortion issue. This was the elephant in the room, and it didn't seem to be discussed much Tuesday night during the election coverages. There's a statistic out from the CNN National House exit poll from Tuesday night describing the positive or negative effect on voters of various age groups. And here's a couple of the statistics from that. 65 and over went for Republicans plus 13. 45 through 64 went for Republicans plus 11. 30 to 44 went for Democrats plus 2. And 18 to 29 went for Democrats plus 28. That is a huge number. The Gen Zers were very influential, and I believe the Roe versus Wade reversal was their main concern. I know several very intelligent and successful women who felt the same way and so voted Democrat completely down the line. I'm not sure how the Republicans can change their messaging on this, but they need to do something. Someday I'll dedicate an episode to my take on abortion, but let me just say this. And this is the one rare instance I actually agree with anything that Bill Clinton says. He once said that abortion should be legal and safe, but rare. A pro or anti-abortion politician has already alienated half the population. A leader in any size role is the leader of all their constituents, not just the ones who agree with them. I feel like abortion needs to be legal so it is safe and available for those who want or need it. But there should also be very strict boundaries. My take is promoting abortion without any restrictions is as bad as saying absolutely no abortions. I don't believe this should even be a political issue, insofar as it is essentially certain religious beliefs being imparted on the whole society. And in a secular world with laws for the entire society, you need to try and make them benefit and protect as many of the citizens as possible, regardless of their religious or moral views. Or else, isn't that pushing a religion on others, which is basically what the founders were trying to avoid in the first place? So again, more to follow on that topic once I better understand the facts and can better articulate my views, because it is such an important issue. All right, so back to those two topics I was originally wanting to talk about the midterms. The first being the insane rhetoric leading up to the election, and then the second, the labeling of anyone who questioned the 2020 election or aligns with Trump as an election denier. Let's start with some of the crazy rhetoric leading up to Tuesday's vote. So first, there was the democracy itself is at risk if there is a red wave. No, all that would happen is there would be some parity within the governing process with some level of checks and balances against what I and many believe to be the far left agenda that does not have America's best interests in mind. All a red wave would mean is the Democrats and the left would not have a supermajority like they've had for the last 2 years, and a radical agenda would be slowed. Obviously, in the left's mind, that would be catastrophic. But the hard right feels the same way should the Democrats hold the House and the Senate. We now assume the GOP will have control of the House, but have to wait to see about the Senate. Democracy, or rule of the majority, or the mob, as the Greeks would have said, or think of it as a one-party dominated government, would be impacted. But a constitutional republic, which is what America is actually strengthened with those checks and balances. If we get Republican control of the House and potentially of the Senate, we would have those checks and balances. And I'll take it a step further. Our Constitution has rules in place to stop just that type of thing from happening. And I agree with what Jonathan Turley said recently. He appeared on the November 5th episode of Fox and Friends Weekend and was discussing the hyperbolic rhetoric from the left about the potential end of our democracy. Turley is a constitutional law professor and a regular contributor on Fox. And he said this, and I quote, "It is deeply offensive for anyone who is familiar with our constitutional system. We have the most successful constitutional system in the history of the world. I mean, this is a system that has weathered every challenge. It is a constitution that was written for the worst of times, not the best of times. James Madison crafted this constitution so we didn't have to rely on the good motivations of our leaders that we would have a system with checks and balances. It has weathered every storm, and that's why this is so unsettling, this sort of crisis of faith. And it is coming from our leaders and our leading pundits trying to tell American citizens that our constitutional system is about to collapse." Turley continues, "It's really alarming, particularly when they cite January 6th. The system worked on January 6th. Everything was carried out according to the Constitution by the officials in charge. The court ruled against former President Trump, including many of his own appointees. Now, you can debate the merits back and forth about the election, but the system itself did not even skip a beat. It worked exactly the way it was intended, and that is the reason this borders on a type of defamation. The Constitution is the one functioning, working, moving part that we have, despite the efforts of our leaders." Another example of the rhetoric is from Hillary Clinton a week before the midterms, which I found on the newsbreak.com website, titled, "Hillary Clinton said voters don't really understand the consequences of electing Republicans in the midterms." And you can obviously see where this article is going. She said that in an interview with Joy Reid on MSNBC, fear-mongering about Republicans wanting to do away with Medicare and Social Security. What really bothers me about these comments is it shows just how condescending she is towards us citizens. I feel like she's saying, we know what's best, better leave it to us. I've never liked her, and these type of comments just solidify my feelings about her. After all, I'm one of the citizens she called deplorable. And who can forget the Republicans are Nazis trope. This is from a Breitbart article from November 6th by Pam Key titled Clyburn, Questioning 2020 Election Akin to the Rise of Fascism in 1930s Germany and Italy. The article says, House Majority Whip James Clyburn, Dem from South Carolina, said on this week's broadcast of Fox News Sunday, claimed those skeptical of how the 2020 election was concluded were aligning themselves with a movement that he likened to the rise of fascism in Europe in the 1930s. And then there's this beauty. During their last debate for the Georgia gubernatorial office, Stacey Abrams accused Governor Kemp of voter suppression. The Zero Edge article from October 20th says it all. The article is titled, On the First Day of Early Voting for the 2022 Midterms, Georgia Positively Smashed the Previous Day One Turnout Record. The article states, Is this what voter suppression looks like? On the first day of early voting for the 2022 midterms, Georgia positively smashed the previous one-day turnout record. More than 130,000 Georgians cast their ballot on Monday, a jaw-dropping 85% gain over the first day of the 2018 midterms. Nonetheless, on a Monday night debate, Democratic gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams doubled down on her claims that incumbent Governor Brian Kemp has relentlessly worked to prevent Georgians from participating in elections. She says he has assiduously denied access to the right to vote. We need a governor who believes in the access to the right to vote and not in voter suppression, which is the hallmark of Brian Kemp's leadership. Juiced by the high-profile governor's race and a spicy Senate race pitting Herschel Walker against incumbent Democrat Raphael Warnock, the remarkable turnout kept rolling on Tuesday, with even more voters turning out for day two than on the second day of voting for the 2020 presidential election. That's pretty much unheard of. While that was happening, Abrams was back out on the campaign trail, simultaneously acknowledging the record turnout and proclaiming voter suppression is alive and well in Georgia. Man, I'm glad she lost on Tuesday. And then finally, all Tuesday night during PBS NewsHour's coverage of the elections, they constantly referred to anyone who ever questioned the 2020 election or were MAGA Republicans and therefore deniers as GOP candidate, and then insert the name here, is an election denier. And that was the moniker that they gave them all every time they talked about them. Anyway, in case anyone forgot, it wasn't just Hillary who denied the results of the 2016 presidential election. Among 150 examples of Democrat election denial in 2016 provided by the Republican National Committee at GOP.com, one example stands out to me from the following article titled 67 Democrat Congressmen or Congress members planning to skip the inauguration. The number of lawmakers who will not attend the ceremony Friday keeps growing. This was by Jennifer Hansler from January 20th, 2017. And quoting the article, dozens of Democratic members of Congress have announced they will skip Donald Trump's inauguration this Friday. While some of the 67 made their decision in previous weeks, now obviously those individuals didn't view him as legitimate. The article continues. Many more have come forward in recent days, citing the president-elect's perceived insult of Representative John Lewis as the final straw. Trump lashed out at the civil rights icon Saturday morning after Lewis said in a Friday interview he didn't view Trump as a legitimate president and would not attend the inauguration. Congressman John Lewis should spend more time on fixing and helping his district, which is in horrible shape and falling apart, not to mention crime infested, rather than falsely complaining about the election results, Trump tweeted back. The left claims Donald Trump is to blame for all the distrust in the current election process, but both sides are to blame, as those examples above show. I find myself agreeing with Lev Golunkin, who penned an op-ed on NBC News recently. He's an author and a Ukrainian refugee who escaped Russian control in 2022. His works have been in all the major mainstream media outlets, and his op-ed, published on Monday, was titled, Trump's Denial is the Second Big Lie. In it, he discusses how the Democratic Party refused to accept Donald Trump's victory in 2016. To quote the article, Trump's mendacity is arguably the second big lie. 4 years earlier, the Hillary Clinton campaign and leading Democrats refused to acknowledge the election, claiming Donald Trump was not a legitimate president. The Democrats' rejection of the 2016 vote eventually spawned claims the Russians meddled in the election. My take: the protest marches that occurred after Trump won, followed by Russiagate, and then 2 impeachments did more to hurt our faith in the election system than what happened in 2020. Because the establishment thought he was illegitimate, they tried everything they could do, both legally and illegally, to get rid of him. Golonkin finishes his piece by saying, Democrats need to be honest about their consequences of their actions after the 2016 election. And until we truthfully admit our mistakes, any attempt to reassure voters about election integrity will be framed as nothing more than hypocrisy. And I completely agree with that. So just to close out this episode, I believe the last 2 presidential elections opened the door and showed anyone paying attention how the industrial political establishment and power players will not allow an outsider to threaten the hold they have on the levers of power in this country and the direction it is going. I have a nagging feeling that we as citizens of our country really don't have any say in who runs it. For the individuals that have their heads in the sand, they may not even be aware of this. But if you're like me and you're trying to figure out the truth, this unfortunately seems to be the reality. I'm just glad the election is over, but obviously we still got a ways to go because the runoff isn't until December. But I am disappointed in the outcome. Unfortunately, the hyperbolic rhetoric won't decrease, which is a shame because it diminishes the institutions and it makes me not take these people seriously. So, all right, that is it for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll end it like I always do. If you're in the military, the police departments, fire departments, or first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much for your service. Stay safe. This is the Rain Man. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Rain Man's Take, Observations on the World We Live in. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow Rain Man's Take on Instagram at Rain Man's Take. Also, check out our website at www.rainmanstakepodcast.com and send your comments to rainmanstake@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for future podcasts, which will be coming out every Thursday at 5 p.m. West Coast time.